This guy right here is me a few months ago when I made a video explaining the 7 stages of the 10 Sefirot of Kabbalah. Because I figured out the exact formula how to explain to you what you need to know about the 10 Sefirot, based on my 15 plus years of Kabbalah study. Here we go. The 10 Sefirot evolve through 7 stages, beginning with their appearance in their ultimate infinite singularity state, all the way to how they play out in human experience and consciousness. We'll understand what role the Sefirot play in each stage. Excuse my accent, please, but I call the Sefirot Sefirot. The 10 Sefirot exist as a medium to existify everything that exists. I sometimes think of it like DNA. DNA is the code within our cells transferred to us from our parents and make us what we are. Sefirot are the code transferred to us from divinity and make us what we are. Throughout this video, feel free to change the playback speed so you can learn at your own pace, and you can always go back to review the chapters which you may have not understood so well. As always, please leave all suggestions or questions in the comments below. They really help us shape future videos. This video is one of the deepest and most comprehensive of any of the videos I've made yet, but I'm confident with good focus, we can tackle this together. Okay, so there are 7 stages I'm supposed to talk about. What you're about to hear is a general vision of the first 3 stages, where we describe what God's imagination looks like and how it works. That will take less than 2 minutes. Then you'll hear how this imagination has a bunch of stages inside it. Here we go. Let's rewind to a state of existence where there is only God. Please join me as we enter the unimaginable existence of God. God imagines within himself an interest to connect with creations, things that are not him, not infinite. They will receive their existence from him, from his infinite power and energy. But when God imagines things, they are real, unlike our human imagination that does nothing and is all forgotten once we move on. God's imagination creates real things within it. It's a divine vision coming from his deepest essence. Within this divine imagination to have creations, there exists the details of what exactly that would look like and how exactly these beings would relate to infinity. Disclaimer: with us humans, when we imagine things, we don't yet have all the details in the beginning. Like when we want to get a house, it's a general idea. We don't necessarily have all the measurements of the house and the colors and the furniture's location just yet. Those are details of a developed idea. First, we have the general idea. With God, though, it's all there, within. The desire is within the imagination, and within that desire are all the details. Okay, those details are the Sefirot, or as others would call it, Sefirot. What are the Sefirot? The Sefirot are composed of energy and vessel, Or and Kli. The Or is a giver and the Kli is the receiver. These are the details within that infinite vision. This probably sounds all very confusing. Let's organize the topic. There are several stages of Sefirot. There are the details, how they exist in a more general form, and then there is how they appear in a more detailed form. The first stage of the Sefirot is called Akudim, where all the Sefirot are tied into one. One what? Tied into one Kli, one receiver.
It's called Akudim, 10 energies in one container.
All 10 details of imagination are tied into one imaginary receiver, one imaginary creation. There's only one imaginary receiver, one Kli here, because this is very high up in the spiritual infinity. So there isn't really much focus here on the details of the actual creations. In our human experience, something like this would play out when we want to build a building, so we start thinking about the contractor, but we don't yet start thinking about the details of how many employees the contractor would need. In the next stage, the second stage of the development of the Sefirot, this stage is called Nekudim. We start to imagine the details of creation of the receiver. So here, instead of there being 10 energies in one vessel, there are 10 energies in 10 vessels. Now, there's a problem. Because this is still very high up in the spiritual evolution, when we put the energy and the vessel together, they don't really fit.
So there's 10 energies, but they're not balanced with the containers. It's chaotic. It's imbalanced.
In other words, the Or is so infinite and powerful here that it cannot fully imagine the receiver in this stage. But it does. only on a very minimal level. This causes a mystical phenomenon called the Shaviras HaKelim, the shattering of the vessel. There obviously aren't any shattered pieces of glass in an infinite imagination. Instead, it's a metaphor for the fact that the vessels are kind of neglected and ignored by the Or in this stage. Or more like, when we examine the divine imaginary state of this level, the energy takes all the attention. I'm tempted to compare this to a human imagination. When we think about the contractor and even think about the 10 employees he'll need to do the job, we just don't think about the equipment that they'll need to do the job. So they'll just end up sitting there wasting their time. That's called the vessels getting no attention. But these metaphors I'm using from human imagination, I'm just shooting off the top of my head. To truly understand these topics, much more study is needed. So please make sure to watch more of our in-depth videos coming after this so you'll get a deeper understanding. In our human imaginations, these stages are just theoretical stages before we actually go ahead and get to do things. In reality, no one ever hires a contractor with 10 employees but without the equipment. But with God, each stage of these imaginations actually exists. The third of these stages is called Berudim. You might actually be familiar with the more famous name for this world, and it's called Atzilus or Atzilut. Here, the Or and the Kli finally become unified. They become one within the infinite imagination. Finally, the vessels, the receiver, get the proper attention they need. Now let's work on getting a better understanding of exactly what Atzilus is and how the 10 Sefirot within it play out. As we said, Atzilus is God imagining a detailed structure of how God will create a universe using these 10 Sefirot. Till now, meaning all the stages before Atzilus, were just the stages of completing the structure of this complete imagination. Now in Atzilus, this detailed imagination is complete. All we need to do now is bring it into actuality.
So now you have call it a world, a dimension with 10 components, which define basically the ingredients and make up this entity. And those 10 will continue to evolve. That's when you say the 10 spheres of Atzilus. They will evolve into the 10 spheres of Beriyah, and they will start taking on more and more shape.
So at first, this imagination comes into actuality from Atzilus into the next world in a very general form. It's just the potential for actual physical existence. In other words, the 10 Sefirot are all here, and see how they can give life to physical things like humans, animals, plants, and stones. Did you catch that? The 10 Sefirot here are no longer parts of God's imagination. They're separate, created beings outside of God, but they're still spiritual. They're merely the potential state of all existence. It's interesting because without this stage, we would not be able to exist. But it's so spiritual and intangible that another few layers of spirituality are necessary in order for us to reach the final product of physical, limited beings in this universe. This stage is called Beriyah, creation. The next stage of the Sefirot forms and visualizes the process in greater detail, thereby relating more to finite beings and creations. This is called Yetzirah, formation. Then there is a world of action, where the Sefirot begin to give life to our physical world. As you can see, Beriyah, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, these last 3 worlds we've been talking about, didn't get much attention in this video, and that's because we'll be discussing it at length in other videos. To summarize and clarify this process, we started by saying that there is an imagination and a desire within God's infinity. We've simply zoomed into that and noticed that within that desire, there are details already. We zoomed in further and discovered these details with energy and vessels. We zoomed in further and noticed the potential for physical existence. We continued zooming until we found this universe.
The higher you go, the less words there are, and the less tangible definitions, because you're dealing with very abstract and very, we'll call it like almost what they call a nebulous state.
This was just a short video trying to explain very deep ideas in Kabbalah. If you like this content and want to see more of it, make sure you watch another one of our videos where we go in depth and detail into all these sophisticated ideas. If If you think I deserve a coffee after this video, you can go to buymeacoffee.com to buy me a coffee. The link's in the description, and that would also support this channel and help us make future videos. Regardless, you can join us by becoming a monthly member. If you'd like to join a live class where you can ask live questions and phone calls and chats, make sure you check out our different membership tiers on Patreon and buymeacoffee.com. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of our existing monthly members and subscribers. Thank you for watching till the end, and see you next time.